All right, welcome in and happy Friday to you. So I hear Neon Dion, causing all sorts of issues there for this game coming up against Colorado State, the Battle of Colorado. Now, the good news is we've got to play on both the side and the total. We're going to break down this game for you coming up, not to mention we're going to talk a little Syracuse football. We got Purdue and we've got a couple of best bets you are not going to want to miss as we welcome in three of the best at Wager Talk. One Steve Double R Merril in the house. Adam Trigger here, as well as Mr. Veno, Rob Veno, ready to go. And gentlemen, happy Friday. And what a weekend this is going to be, week 3 of the college football season. We got a little something for everybody here, Merril. And I love the game you chose to start right off with, as BYU taking on Arkansas in a revenge spot here. And seems a lot of folks think BYU might have a shot to upend Arkansas. What are you thinking?
Well, I would agree with you. I think a lot of folks think that, and that's why the line is too short. And that's why I actually like the other side in this game. I do a database rescore simulation, 10,000 games. On average, I've got Arkansas winning by 14.5. So I do think this line is way too short at -8. Opened as high as -10. So I think you're right, Joe. I do think people are kind of suckering into the BYU side in this game, but there's a few reasons I like Arkansas, not just the line value, but I also like the fact that this is the type of team I think that has motivation to win by margin here. They've got the SEC schedule starting next week. Tough trip to LSU. They've got A&M after that on a neutral. They can't afford to overlook this game. And also a lackluster win last week. It is a red flag when a team doesn't even score the point spread. They were 38-point favorite. They only beat Kent State 28-6. But I think part of the reason is because they're kind of holding things close to the vest for this game and for the SEC schedule starting up. Didn't have to exert much against Western Carolina in week 1. No turnovers, and they have forced 6. So maybe that won't be quite as fortunate this week. But it's also the first true road game for BYU after 2 games in the thin air and altitude. 2 games in which they won straight up, but they failed to cover both of them. And they did not score the point spread at all against Sam Houston State, only 14 points in that game. Now, Sam Houston State's always been a very good FCS team. I believe they're transitioning up this year. Southern Utah, they did put up 41 as a 30-point favorite. But I think BYU is going to struggle a bit offensively in this game against an Arkansas defense that's looked really good so far. I've given up just 19 total points in the season. And I like the setup here, and I like the fact that people are kind of leaning towards BYU. We'll do a little fade the public college football style here, and we'll take the line value with Arkansas -8.
All right, looking with the line value there for Arkansas. And Trig, you have an interesting game, or at least you're going to take a look at least from a side perspective, it appears, with Colorado State taking on Colorado. Now, Prime says, Norvell screwed up. He made it personal. No way. So I believe he just gave every one of his players sunglasses in retaliation. So those guys will be sporting all over campus with $300 pairs of sunglasses. So what are you thinking, though, as far as the game, though? I mean, what are we up to, 23.5 now? What are you going to do in this spot?
Yeah, so I'll address the line move first. I did lock this in at 23.5. If you shop around, there's 24. Now, I talked about this game on Monday, and I said this would be a client play for me. It is 4% play, Colorado State plus 23.5. But I am interested to see where this goes off at. And I just didn't want to get to the scenario where I thought 23.5 might be the point where the same numbers people that all loved Nebraska last week came in and bet it like all at the same time and moved it. And I just didn't want to miss 23.5, which is why I locked in there. So do your due diligence, because you may be able to even get a better number than me. Another reason that this probably moved up is the fact that it's going to be Fowler Nicolosi at quarterback instead of Clay Millen. I don't think that's a huge deal, Joe, for a couple of reasons. One, it's not like Millen is just out. Like, they could bring him in if they wanted to. Remember, Colorado State, I believe they're the only FBS team in the country that had a bye last week. So the only team in the FBS that didn't have a game. They've had 2 weeks to prepare for this game. And everything I'm hearing is that, it was something that they sort of decided in their week off of practice. They like what they saw out of him in the Washington State game. He kind of came in and played well. If you go back to last season, he played in 3 games. He beat Nevada. He actually came in and played great in a game that Colorado State covered and didn't win. I think it might have been Utah State because I know I had a bet in it last year. And so this feels to me like Norvell's just going to kind of ride the hot hand, but it also makes it a little bit more difficult for Colorado because now they've got to prepare for two different quarterbacks, and they can go back to Millen at any time, who I do believe is the better long-term option for this team. And I think if Millen does get into this game, he'll probably play fine. As far as Colorado State is concerned, let's rewind to the summer for a second. This is a team that took some sharp money on their season win total over. And then if you go back to week 1, they opened against Washington State as a 16-point underdog. That line got bet all the way to 8.5. Of course, they end up getting blown out. Joe, I still have that CLV trophy on my mantle because I had 14 and they got killed. But can we just tip our cap maybe to Washington State being better than anyone thought they were going to be? Because Washington State rolled in that game 50-24, and then they came out the next week, and of course they beat Wisconsin. So I think it might have been a little bit of Colorado State maybe not playing a great game, especially their defense did not play well. But I do think that that's a team. They have a lot of guys back on defense. I think they should be better. And of course, like on the offensive side of the ball, remember last year Norvell took over a team that was a run-heavy team from Adazio, who all he did was run the ball. Now it's much more up-tempo. It was always going to take some time to sort of get his system in place. It's just a whole different ball game now, being the team that's the 24-point favorite that needs to sort of go out and still win a football game. Like there's still a football game to be played here. They haven't won the game yet. I'm worried that they might sort of go out with all this hype surrounding the game and act like they've already won it. And this is still going to be a really big deal for Colorado State. And I think this number at 23.5 and 24 is laughable. So much value there. So I took the Rams 4% play. I think they're going to hang around.
Yeah, I want to thank you. I spent 2 weeks with a therapist trying to forget that Colorado State bet, but thanks for dredging up those memories there. Really do appreciate that CLV trophy. And guys, if you do want plenty more top 25 action, head-to-head previews, best bets, we've got plenty of them at Wager Talk TV. So if you hit that subscribe button, hit the like button, you can get all of those game previews here as we get ready to head into week 3, just a couple of clicks away. And Rob, Veno, we are coming to you, and we are going to a little upstate New York, or really heading to Purdue, actually, as Syracuse will be taking up that team from upstate New York. The Qs, I'm shocked Adam Trigger has not broken down a Qs game yet, but I think he said earlier, Rob, when you outscore your opponents 113-7, there's not a whole hell of a lot to break down at this point. So this is a test here, is it not, on the road against Purdue for the Qs? What are you going to look at here?
It is a test for the Qs, Joe. I mean, this game opened Purdue pick 56 total, climbs now to Syracuse, the road team favorite, 2.5. Looking at 58, and you're right, 113-7, the combined score for Syracuse over the first two overmatched opponents, Colgate and Western Michigan. 99 of those 113 points by the offense. They've had a defensive score in each of those two games. Kudos to Rocky Long, who came from, who'd have thought this guy would have ever ended up in Syracuse, New York, after all the years of San Diego State and New Mexico. But this 3.35 paying immediate dividends, again, against overmatched opponents. We'll see here. But I do like that side in this game at under a field goal for a couple of reasons. Garrett Schrader just seems to get better and better. He's off to a monster start so far. But I find the biggest improvement in Syracuse right now to be this offensive line, which for the last 2 or 3 years was an absolute shambles. And there was a point watching Syracuse games where I would fear for Garrett Schrader running the football. He took so many hits. Every time he'd get hit, he'd cringe and wait for the cart to come out and get this guy. But it looks like the OL is better. But if I just look at Purdue, at home, opening week, they had a lead against Fresno State, choked it away late. I just talked about how they had a lead against Virginia Tech, choked that one away as well. That's why I like Syracuse in this game. Aiden O'Connell's not on the field leading this Purdue team. Jack Plummer in no way, shape, or form is Aiden O'Connell. Jack Plummer's having a little bit of difficulty. You watch these games knowing where to go exactly with the football. And it's a real change here. I mean, Ryan Walters is a defensive-minded head coach, and Brahms' air raid is gone, and now they become somewhat run heavy. So they're trying to force a little bit of a square peg into a round hole. And if Syracuse is any good at all, which I think they are, I think they can shut down the run and then get after the passer here, which is what Rocky Long's defense is best at. To me, yes, it's a test for Syracuse. They are untested to this point, but from what I see, I think they're good enough to go into Purdue. And maybe I should say that it's half a play on Syracuse and half a fade against Purdue at this point in time. So lay under a field goal. I'll take Syracuse minus the points.
All right, looking for Q's to continue its winning ways here on the road. So that's it. 3 big game breakdowns. We've got 3 best bets on games coming up, including we talked about the side there in Colorado State. We're going to have a play on the total for you here in just a second. But I do want to remind you guys, if you have any questions on these games or any other games in week 3 of the college football season, drop them in the comment section as Steve Merril, Rob, Veno, and Adam Trigger. They will be watching and monitoring all weekend long here. So if you got some questions, drop them in. These guys will absolutely get back to you and answer them as we send it back to Steve Merril, kicking off the best bet section. And boy, oh boy, some people would avoid this team like the plague, but not you, Merril. You're going to Nebraska here, taking on Northern Illinois. They're laying 11, I believe. Is this is your best bet? So which side are you going with?
All right, this game was just a bit outside for making the cut, but one thing I'd love to look for early in the season is teams off misleading losses. And I don't know that Nebraska necessarily should have won at Colorado last week, but they definitely didn't deserve to lose by 22. And the reason I say that is because they had 222 rushing yards in the game, held Colorado to just 58. Week 1, they lose at Minnesota with a 181-55 rushing edge. The reason they lost both of those road games, 8 turnovers and only 2 forced. Now they're back at home. Matt Rule, first-year head coach after being at Temple, Baylor, and the Carolina Panthers. He now has his home opener for Nebraska. So this is definitely a focus spot, and they will have plenty of motivation to win by margin, and I think they can do so. First of all, my 10,000 game database simulation has, on average, Nebraska winning by 13.5. So the current line of the 10.5 to 11 is too short. We get some line value. And second of all, they have a huge edge once again on the line of scrimmage against a Northern Illinois squad that's averaging just 2.8 yards per rush this year. Nebraska is going to win the rushing dominance, and that'll allow them to extend the lead late in the game. I don't think Northern Illinois has much backdoor cover potential either. And yes, they went into Boston College in week 1-1, and maybe it was a sandwich spot last week, but they still lost outright against an FCS team at home as a 9-point favorite. And even worse, they only put up 11 points in that game against Southern Illinois. Take the value with an underrated 0-2 Nebraska team that wins by double digits and covers this one. Nebraska minus the 10.5 to 11. That kicks off Saturday night at 7 Eastern. Don't forget my 5 official best bets right now. Full 30 days for just $99 with promo code Steve99, wagertalk.com.
All right, Steve, there you go. Vote for Nebraska here in that one. And Trig, we're going to head it to you for a best bet here. And we heard the side earlier from you when it came to Colorado State and Colorado, but your best bet, oh, you going to what, Texas are you now? But not that Texas. You going to UTEP? Talk to me about this.
Yeah, so first, same promo code for me, except it's Adam. Adam99 gets you 30 days of NFL or college football. I too have 5 college football plays locked in, a 5% play in the NFL, off to another great start in the NFL. As far as my best bet for the show, I went against UTEP last week on this show and won with Northwestern. And UTEP is still the complete and utter disaster that I talked about last week. But this week, I'm going to go with them and I'm going to explain why. So let's just the thing with UTEP is this. They have played just god-awful pretty much all season. They're only, their only win is over FCS Incarnate Word. The opener, I had a 5%er week 0 opener against Jacksonville State. They outgained Jacksonville State by 100 yards, but turned it over 3 times and made inexplicable coaching decision after inexplicable coaching decision to lose that football game 17-14. And then, of course, last week, we got it right with Northwestern. They were completely blown out. But they have not come even remotely close, in my opinion, to playing to their potential or what their potential could be as a team. And for that reason, I do think there's some line value here. And I almost like them better in this role big underdog. They don't have to go out and execute in a close game. This is really more about just not being as bad as the odds makers sort of suggest they are here with this number. Arizona is a team, they were kind of impressive last week. I mean, I think many, if you polled the panel here, I think almost everyone would agree that they probably deserve to win that game. Outgained Mississippi State in a lot of ways. They kind of threw that game away, like 5 turnovers, just almost execution that you're used to seeing out of UTEP by Arizona last week to lose in overtime to Mississippi State. But you know what? This is a whole different ball game being a favorite, like a 3 touchdown favorite. Joe, I don't know if they're going to go out and win this game, but it just feels like a really good spot for them to sort of bounce back and play a respectable football game. And on the other side, very difficult spot for Arizona to lose sort of the heartbreaker in overtime and then have to come back as an inflated favorite. So I'm going with the Miners here. Didn't make my client card yet. That doesn't mean it won't end up on there by Saturday, but Miners plus 18, plus 17.5 seems like way too many, and I think they get the cover.
I love Trig going with the late night degenerate special there. Last game on the board, 11 o'clock Eastern time tip there with Arizona taking on UTEP. So should be a good one, guys. And again, if you're new, just a quick suggestion to Wager Talk TV, go ahead, hit that subscribe and like button. We've got plenty of game previews, game breakdowns, best bets, just a couple of clicks away here. If you are looking for something to play here in this week 3 battle going on here in college football across the country. And Veno, will come to you for the best bet here because we heard Trig talk about the side in Colorado State. Now we're going to talk about the over in this game with Prime. So what are you looking at in this Battle of Colorado?
I'm going to play over, Joe. And 61 earlier this morning. Of course, the national media got hold of, this Dion J. Norvell thing, and the money went flying to 63. It's now come back to 62. I really do like the total here, Joe, without all the nonsense between Dion, although it only adds fuel to the fire, right? I mean, his son gets into the end zone last week and does a dance and comes back and tells his dad it's personal. And then again this week, it gets personal again. So I can only imagine what the dance might be in the end zone here. But there's a couple of really good fundamental reasons to like over in this game here. All the problems that Colorado had last week with that Nebraska defense, and they had immense problems with the Nebraska defense. Steve touched on it a little bit. Those are not likely to happen here for a couple of reasons. The game plan last week was put together by Matt Rule. Matt Rule, a defensive mind, a sharp defensive mind with NFL background. He knew what was coming. He knew how to handle it. That's not going to happen here because Matt Rule isn't putting together the game plan. The reason, again, Steve touched on a little bit, that Nebraska couldn't make any headway is because Jeff Sims just kept turning the ball over in that contest, right? Just giving it back. Somehow Colorado got to 36 points in that game without looking good offensively for the majority of that contest. Nebraska's far superior defensively compared to Colorado State. Colorado State opened up against Washington State and got their heads handed to them. They were on the field for 87 plays. They gave up 556 yards, 466 through the air, 76% completions. Colorado's going to get theirs even with a week off. CSU probably can't figure out what Nebraska did. I mean, you could watch the game film and you could try and copy it. But the bottom line is Colorado State doesn't have the horses that Nebraska has, and they don't have Matt Rule. So I think Colorado definitely is going to get theirs. As Adam alluded to with Jay Norvell, you hire Adazio's garbage run game, prehistoric offense, and try and turn it into the air raid that he had in Nevada, taking a little bit of time. But I do believe that between the two quarterbacks, they can get a little something done here against, Washington State, who Colorado State played in the first game, has a defense that was really, really strong last year. And Colorado State kind of figured it out in the fourth quarter when they scored 21 points. Now, you could say they were being blown out. They should score 21 points. But I could say when you're being blown out like that, the other team should have their ears pinned back and they should be sacking your quarterback every play. So works both ways. I think Colorado State might have figured something out. And then again, in my notes, Adam hit on this point, there's the week off in preparation. Again, I don't know that Colorado State could have done anything prep-wise for this game that would help defensively. but I do think they could add some things offensively. And the two quarterback system certainly is one of those things. And having two guys that have been involved as starters works in their favor. They had 320 passing yards against Washington State. I can see Colorado getting the 45 in this game, but I could see Colorado State chasing and getting, 24, 27, and that puts it way over the total. One last thing here. This is an in-state battle, and it's Deion's first. And I don't think he gives a darn if he wins by 100. He's not too worried about Colorado State. He's got his mind on bigger things. You want to make the point in that state that you're the better team. So I think if it comes to scoring points, he'll do it. I think Norvell wants the same. He knows the same thing. So I'm going to play this thing up and over 62, Joe.
Going up and over there should be maybe one of the more entertaining games to see all weekend long there. And there you got it. You got 3 game breakdowns. You got 3 best bets. But we don't stop there. We got plenty more content when it comes to college football as well as the NFL, just a couple of clicks away. So go ahead, click on that video on your screen right now and check out the many other game previews that we've got broken down for you here on Wager Talk TV. Best of luck this weekend. We'll see you again next week for college football week 4.